everybody ready? Okay, we are going to get started tonight for our Council City Council work session. And we are lucky to have Mr. Todd Myers, the board chair for the South Davis Rec Center, here with us tonight. And before we turn the time over to you, I'm sure that you'll just give us a recap of the meeting this morning. Is that correct? So we'll be glad to hear about that meeting, and then we'll go from there. Thank you so much.
Before I go through that, if I could, Mayor, I'd like to thank you for your appointment of council member. What is my name? Kate. What is your name again? We're a little more informal on our board. I wanted to say Kate, so if I say Kate, well, we're but I'm just going with it. Kate has just been an awesome person on our board. We're facing kind of a difficult time. We're coming off of COVID that really hurt revenues, that really hurt memberships. At the same time, we had a roof that had to be replaced and a few other things that were going on with it at the same time. And so we've really hit some hard times budget-wise. And we have been blessed, though, by having Kate and really all of our new city representatives. They're really diving into the finances of the board, of the district. And I feel more confident going forth than I think I ever have. I've been on the board for about 3 years. And I love the detail that she is bringing to our board. I did see Tyson running around. I would love to extend that thank you to him too, if you would share that. We had a little bit of an emotional meeting for a few people today, but I think it was probably one of the most productive meetings that we've had in the 3 years that I've been there. You know, before, even last year, we considered going to bond for the new facilities and definitely did not look into the details like we are going to do. And so when I get into that, we did decide to table the decision to go to bond so that we can accomplish some different things, mainly financial. And it'll take us about a year to get through that, to get everything established, and get us on solid ground again. And so, again, Kate has just been leading the way, helping us with all of that. So I do appreciate that. The other thing before we go into it is I'd like to apologize for the rec district. We have not communicated well with Bountiful. We show you a pretty picture of a pool. Okay, approve it. No, that's not how you do things. I had a conversation with Kate, I think about 2 weeks ago. And she mentioned forming a crew with both the city, the rec district, and the schools. And I gotta tell you, it's the most common sense thing that we should have done from day one. But as she mentions it to me, it's like, yeah, we have never made Bountiful part of the team to look at this 50-meter pool. Is there a possibility to do it at this location? And if it can be done at that location, there's all sorts of different options we need to look at. Do we go to the south? Do we go to the west? Do we go to the east? That's why it's very important that we have all three parties together and have those conversations. One idea that Kate had thrown out is to the west. And I never thought about going to the west. Okay, we wipe out some parking. What we do when we wipe out parking, when you have a tight site, when you take your underground, your stormwater, and you put it underground, you put parking where you come out. And so anyhow, I came off the meeting. I don't know where we'll go with this committee, what the recommendation will be, whether it be coming back to Bountiful and asking for something, or maybe it's North Salt Lake where that facility should be. And so I feel very positive with just a very common sense, practical approach to finding the solution. So again, I just wanted to thank you on that. Today, as I mentioned, we did take a vote. The vote, okay, on the surface is that we put off the bond for a year. And we feel a fair amount of people here upset with that. But at the same time, it wasn't just throw this off to a decision in 12 months. It was a checklist of things that needs to be done before we can go to the bond, to make sure we're doing everything in the right order. I guess we can go ahead and dive in. I'm hoping that Kate can help me get through this. She was taking notes, and I was just trying to run the meetings. But
If I can maybe just add, there's clearly pressures on the pool space in the current facilities. There's clearly a lot of passion among the competitive swim community. The board makeup, it's got 8 total members. Ironically, it's probably the only time it's ever happened in the history of this board where you have 4 that just came on in January and 4 that had served previously for different lengths of time. The new 4 kind of had a learning curve drinking from a fire hose experience. I feel like as one of the newbie 4, we've taken on some of that challenge to drink from the fire hose. I feel like we've had, particularly in Todd, some good leadership to help bridge some of those knowledge gaps and understanding gaps. But it hasn't gone without notice that I feel really positive about the direction from today's meeting, and in particular, this kind of checklist to walk through. There definitely is a community that feels like we should be moving much faster. We should be sprinting towards other solutions, and I know that that's in serving in local government, that can be globally disappointing, the pace at which government sometimes moves, as we experience in not just this area of policy, but others that we are all familiar with from other parts of our service, where in an effort to make sure that we are good stewards of resources, transparent in budgets, thoughtful with taxpayer dollars, sometimes it does mean kind of hitting pause. And I would also really like to shout out one of my colleagues on the Rec District Board, Councilman Spencer Summerhays from Centerville. He put a lot of time and effort into crafting what I thought was a very thoughtful motion with this kind of timeline of action items in order to hopefully get us to a spot where there's a unanimous yes for future potentials, which would, I think, be a great signal to the whole South Davis community. So,
yeah, and I'm sure people are saying that we're putting it off for 12 months, but it's the reality of it is, this checklist, we start at our next board meeting. And so, it's going to take, we're going to have to really analyze some things. There's no doubt about it. Tyson's going to be a key member as we analyze these budgets and how the programs are doing and so forth. And so I definitely appreciate him on that. The first thing, and Kate, if you would please jump in all over the place to help me through this, I appreciate it, is to look at our operations and look at our budget. We've never done a truth in taxation. It's always just been put off. We need to look at our programs, see which ones should be subsidized, which ones do need fee increases, and try to cut any unneeded cost before that truth of taxation. And so that's one of the first areas. And we're looking at on this year's budget. In the past, it may have came up in November, or it could have just simply come to the December meeting. This year, we are starting in September. It is to really analyze that budget. I don't know if,
That was, yeah, the first kind of bullet point in the motion was, to work on implementing immediate corrective budget, um, budget measures, to look at operations, to look at programming, to look at other things, CARES Act, ARPA, sponsorships, signage, advertising opportunities. So that was kind of the first tranche, was diving deep into this, and I agree that having that process start as soon as possible is going to be important to being able to represent to the residents and taxpayers of the district, with the existing subsidy from their property tax and the existing user fees. This is a tight budget. And if we need to then ask for additional funds via truth and taxation process, that if we need to go that route, which we've experienced and know that is, it's a hard process, that we can do that knowing that we've worked really hard on these other areas within control of the board.
very good. Thank you. A lot of these kind of overlap. Completing a comprehensive pro forma operating budget with consideration of facility programs related to the bond. Some of that deals with, we've had for some time, we've known how much things were going to cost as far as the building goes. I don't think there's really been enough detail on what is it going to take to operate each of these facilities. So if the facility here in Bountiful gets that addition, well, it's going to increase the subsidy. And currently we're having problems with the budget. So there's that increase of the subsidy. And then if we're going to expand, there's another increase. And so to really understand these things before we vote. Boy, I do have a lot of overlap in these.
I think it's safe to say that a lot of the motion that Councilman Summerhays made was, having the board do these deep dives, whether it's the pro forma on the operational budget, making sure that the calculations for subsidies for facility number 2 in North Salt Lake, that those are well understood, that we feel like those are that they won't need to grow. We won't have to come back to residents 2 or 3 years into a facility and say, oops, we didn't get the calculation right. That people can feel kind of confident that they've locked into a price and they know what they're getting for that price. And so a lot of his motion was related to the pro formas, calculating of subsidies and operations, making sure that the bond underwriting and pricing and that kind of that full package of financial detail was part of that process that to engage in starting in the next board meeting through the end of that budget process. He has them very detailed in his motion, but for sake of not boring you with all the numbers, it was a lot of timelines on kind of getting that financial picture together.
Can I jump in with a comment?
Yeah.
I love the motion for that aspect specifically, because the way he laid it out, all of that corrective action is known and built in ahead of time before we then consider bonding. So not that every problem will be fixed, but at least we'll know more. And the public can understand that there are probably additional costs that are going to be incurred other places besides just the bond in order to fix that budget. So it was a great meeting, I thought.
For the last couple of days, we've just had our emails flooded with swim team parents. Imagine you have too. And of course, they all want a new 50-meter pool. And they're willing to pay the bond they think they're, their share of that bond, they're willing to pay for it. But they also have to understand, before we go to bond, okay, what's it gonna cost to operate? Because we can't just simply go to the taxpayers on all of it. So if you want one of the best polls in the state, your user fees are gonna have to go up. And so I appreciated all of those emails, but I think they need to understand the full picture before really those recommendations are valid. If we can give you a 50-meter pool and it's gonna cost you twice as much for your swim team expenses, do you still want that 50-meter pool? It may be that that's the case, but we need to, as a board, figure out what that cost is going to be for user fees.
Yeah, so I thought it was a long motion.
Yes, it was.
Because he had written it out in advance to make sure that he had been really thoughtful about it. I appreciated that he circulated it in advance. And it dove into those issues. It included in the motion creating this land issue working group, which I appreciated that was something I had felt strongly about, needing to have a sub-working group on that. I was glad to see that was in.
Can I just ask a
motion.
question about that? Do you know if the intention of that subgroup is for things like field space, identification of field space?
It's two-part, I would say.
Okay.
And Todd, feel free to add your views or impressions. One would be to explore all of the options around the existing facility. Is there an alignment for a 50-meter pool that makes sense? Does it make sense with whatever might be asked or required from Bountiful in our Fourth North Park? Would it make sense with land the district owns as the other, neighbor landowner to the facility? Would there have to be something creative about stormwater? That might take interaction with the city, or perhaps in that discussion, the North Salt Lake facility makes more sense, or maybe there's a third piece of property that pops up to do that, and then the field space would be that other component that's kind of still out there lingering, not quite resolved. And so that's how I understood his sub-work group motion, was to encompass kind of both of those ideas: playing field space, and then alignment of any larger pool space.
Yes, I would agree.
So just to kind of recap, the board this morning voted to postpone the bond until next year, and gave the board directives for specific things they would need to accomplish before that time, such as budget concerns, such as land use, investigating.
Discussions with the school district, and so that all of those would be available, prepared, transparent to the public, transparent to the taxpayers, so that timelines can be met. State code is what dictates those various timelines on, and I know this gets kind of confusing and wonky. There's the property tax tied to the bond repayment for the rec district, and there's property tax tied to the ongoing subsidy. A bond hearing would have to be heard the latest date in August of any year in order to make a November ballot. To adjust the property tax subsidy unrelated to the bond repayment, the state timeline on that, I believe, was a June 22nd, June deadline, and then those hearings take place in August. That doesn't go to a vote of the public like the bond does, but in order to hit those key windows for 2023, the board has a robust work to-do list for really September through the first part of the year, in order to be able to give this type of a report of confidence, I think, back to
So the board
voters of the
will,
district.
the board will do the work necessary over the coming year to put the bond on the ballot, and then the board will vote next year on whether to put the bond on the ballot. And then at that point, if the board votes to do that, then it will be on the ballot for the people to vote on next year, 2023, November.
That is the hope, is that that hard work will be done so that then the board can be confident in a referral vote next summer.
And I'm confident we have the right people on board. We have some really good people on it.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions from the council on this process?
Thank you. I would appreciate if we could have a reset. We need to be better communicators. We will do that.
Well, we appreciate you being here tonight to give us kind of a recap, and Councilwoman Bradshaw, we appreciate your work on the board there and for keeping us in the loop. And thank you so much for your time being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for our next item, we're excited to have a discussion about the final skate park design. Mr. Lloyd Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor. Over the last few months since the spring when we awarded the contract to design the skate park, Spawn Ranch has been busy putting together materials that they've collected from the open house activities with the local skateboarding community. And tonight we wanted to present the culmination of their work. Adam Eichhorn from Spawn Ranch is joining us via Zoom from Chicago tonight, and he's going to introduce the concept that they've put together. In your memo, I kind of wanted to give you just a quick reminder of where the skate park is proposed to be located in the park. And not to say that that red square represents the size of the skate park by any means. Right. But I'm going to turn the time over to Adam and let him introduce their design and talk about their efforts in putting this together. Take it away, Adam.
Thank you, Lloyd. Can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure.
Can we make
Hello.
Can we make it a little louder? Try again.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
That's better.
I can speak a little bit loud. I'll do my best to speak a little bit louder. And at any given time, if I cut out or there's a glitch of any sort, just flag me and I'll rewind a little bit. First off, I want to say thank you to the council for having me this evening, and to Lloyd and Brock and the folks over at the Parks District who kind of work through this process. I'll start by sharing my screen, and I'll kind of show you. Oops, I'll need to be able to. I think you're going to be able to do that now. There we go. Good. So, can everybody see an image with 3 panes and basically and a skate park model?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this is not the final. This is one of 2 concepts that was revealed back in June 30th. And I'm kind of going backwards, but the lead up to the revealing of the 2 concepts was a result of a meeting that was held a month prior where we collected data. So back in late May, I came out, we met with the community, we collected data, and then myself and our design team worked on 2 concepts. So this is one concept, and I'm not going to go into the details on this concept, but you can kind of get an idea of some of the features that were shown. We gave the community the opportunity to talk about what they liked and didn't like about each concept. So this is option 1 that was revealed back in on June 30th. Here's option 2. Right off the bat, you can tell that one is, let's say, more square than the other. The community liked the idea of a linear skate park footprint. And I think that what caught their eye was the double bowl concepts. So I'm going to show the final concept that basically took a lot of the keys from each of those 2 options and then came up with this option here. So I'm going to skip ahead. So this is what we're calling the final design. During the conceptual design process, pre-construction documents, there's always opportunities to tweak a few things. So as much as I want to say this is the final, there's potential to have a couple things potentially change. Those often come up during the construction document phase when we're getting into super details. We like to take into consideration spacing between features, run-ups we call them, heights of quarter pipes and ledges and those kinds of things. So at any rate, so let's go through this design right off the bat. So you can see this is at Washington Park. This view is going to be south looking north. And so to the, pardon me if I kind of explain this incorrectly, but the mountains would be this way, okay? And the Salt Lake would be this way, to the left. So yeah, so right off the bat, we're gonna talk a little bit about that. You can see that this park is broken into two zones. One is a transition bowl zone. I call this the bowl deck. That's just my term for it. That doesn't mean it is the term. But up top here, essentially, it's designed to have the in-ground bowls or pools. Brock pointed out that this bowl looks like a bee, and I totally agree. It's actually modeled after a bowl that I'm lucky enough to skate in my friend's property near the Wisconsin border here. It's actually a wooden bowl, and I took those. I love the bowl so much. We took the specs and designed this bowl. It fits nicely into this park. It's a perfect compact bowl. It's an intermediate style. This entire park is designed as with basically the intermediate vibe with some beginner features and advanced features. And I'll point those out as we go through. But at any rate, we'll talk about the bowl here. 2 different depths. We call that a waterfall. Can everybody see my mouse cursor or arrow by chance?
Yes.
Perfect. Good. Thank you. So yeah, so you'll have a shallow end and a deep end. I don't have exact specs on these depths. I have an idea, kind of. Everything was drawn in our design program. So if you had any questions, you can ask. But again, those details often could change during the construction document phase. So I'll call that the intermediate bowl. It's compact. It's an enclosed bowl. You have to drop into it. Around the pool deck or the bowl deck, you'll see these benches. These are also skatable ledges. So that kind of doubles as seating and a skate feature. This combination bowl with multi-level combination bowl has 3 depths, shallow with a roll-in for beginners. This also doubles as a half pipe. And then it drops into the medium depth section with an extension, or oftentimes called a clamshell or a cradle. The cradle on the backside has transition. So everything here is very flowy. And then that drops into the deeper end down here, which is a little bit larger bowl, more for the advanced riders. But any rider that has the ability to ride transition should be able to ride this bowl with no problems at all. All right, so stepping down into the midsection / street area. So again, the parks are typically a mixture of transition, which would be over here, and street, which would be over here. And the street features are going to resemble real street typically. So you'll see rails and ledges and stairs and curbs and things like that. So off of the pool deck, this is all transition. This is actually a bank down and another bank down. These are designed to separate the two spaces. You don't want a board or any kind of wheeled object rolling accidentally into a bowl. So we try to break that up, and vice versa. We don't want it to go the other way either. So that has a little bit of a ledge right there. And you can see that there's this extension cradle section here that also helps with that. We do want access to both decks. So we have this bank ramp there, and that's actually accompanied by a kind of like a tall curb that can be skated or ridden from both directions on both sides. And that adds to the flow of the park. So dropping down onto this bank, you have kind of an intermediate or beginner intermediate street section. And this is going to have a transition piece here. You always want to have transitions on each end so that you have a start and a stop to the section. So I can envision a multiple riders waiting for their turns up here, 1 or 2 riders at a time running through this section right here. And it's separated by this long skatable curb. And inside of that section or that lane would be a flat bar, which is a very common item that basically needs to be at every skate park. You need to have a flat bar. And then to the south of that is going to be a combo. I'll be able to zoom in a little bit farther on different perspectives, but you can see that this is like a combination of a ledge, a bump. We call that a little bit of a little ramp or a bump to bar. And this is symmetrical, so it can be designed to be ridden from both directions equally. And then a manual pad back here. A manual is a trick where you basically ollie on your board and ride on 2 wheels. So you'll see kind of that theme a couple times throughout here. There's another manual pad right here if you would like to call it that. So there's your beginner intermediate street section. This is going to be more intermediate advanced street section down here. Everything has ability to flow through it. So you can ride back and forth multiple times. You don't have to start and stop if you don't want to. But getting into this section up top here, again, you've got your quarter pipe beginning area. You have this nice bank, this mellow sloped bank. We designed a bollard. We'd like to put those in. They add kind of an architectural element to the skate park, but also a obstacle to jump over. And in some cases, we have them placed throughout the park as seating objects too. But for here is more of a skatable obstacle. So imagine a rider starting here, running through here, ollieing or jumping over that bollard. That's concrete. And kind of stopping or grinding or stalling up here and then coming back. Now you're set up nicely to run and hit the stair section of the intermediate street section. And on the stair section, you've got a number of different features. From the top down, we'll talk about that rail. If you're riding the skate park from, let's say, this direction, we would call that a bump to rail or a bump to bar. If you're riding it from this section, it would be a down bar. Regardless, it's a skatable feature, railing, a rail or a bar designed to grind on or slide on. Right next to that is another set of stairs. This is a 3 set, obviously, 3 stairs. And most of the stairs, riders like to jump up or down them, most of the time down. And they like to say, hey, I ollied a 3 stair or I ollied a 5 stair. So we have actually both in this case. Between the two is actually a ledge. I'll show you that on a different angle. But that is what we call a hubba. It's a down ledge. And this is all steel and concrete. It has an actual kind of a wedge to it. So you have ability to ride up that if you'd like to, and then slide down it or grind down it. And then if you're riding from this direction, let's say east, you would have what we call a Euro gap. So there's a gap here. There's basically a ramp up and a space between the top deck and that ramp. In this case, it's 2 steps, and that's a gap. So those are all fun features that most skaters, skateboarders, and non-motorized wheeled groups will understand about it. A couple other features, and these are kind of the big signature features of this skate park.
Adam?
We've got, yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
There's a grid pattern, maybe just saw cuts in the concrete on the diagram
Yeah.
you're looking at. What's the dimension of those squares?
About 8 feet.
Thank you.
That's just a guesstimate. It's somewhere between 10 and 8. I think it's closer to 8. And those are just put in by our design team during the rendering process. I'm not sure if they're called out specifically in the construction documents, but we can get into that when we get to that phase. Oftentimes we like the ability to place saw cuts in areas that make more sense. So for visual purposes, there are saw cuts in the grid pattern. The lines might not be exactly where they're going to end up being. So this is what we call a volcano. It's essentially a rounded transition piece with a flat top and coping all around it. And it looks really cool. It's incredibly skatable. It serves many purposes. Obviously a really great obstacle. There's no real issue about coming down off of this ledge and running into a volcano. You ride around it to each side or over it. No big deal. One of the purposes is that it serves is to help redirect. So let's say that there's multiple riders on this course at the same time. Somebody drops in, realizes there's someone coming straight at them, and guess what? They can just hit the volcano and it redirects them to a different section. Or you can use the redirect to line up for your trick. So if you wanted to drop in, let's say on this side, redirect over here, and now you're lined up for that Euro gap that we talked about there. Another really cool key feature in this park are these, it's hard to really explain or what we want to call this. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question about the volcano, just real quick.
Yep.
How tall is that when we're talking about people redirecting? Are they going to be able
Yeah.
to see over?
Oh yes, absolutely. It's probably 3 feet at the most.
Oh.
My guess is it's going to be 30 to 36 inches from the base. That's one thing about our parks that I think that we do really nicely is that we figure out how to maximize the energy that you need to get to certain features without having to make things super big and crazy. And of course, you want to be visual through the whole entire park. You want to see the entire park or people in the park. That just helps with safety, obviously. But yeah, probably about 30 inches, 36 inches. So this is going to be a hip feature. And I think it's the easiest way to describe this. It's essentially 2 rounded pads on a bank angle. But if these weren't rounded, there would be essentially a line between here, and it would become a triangular piece, and that would be called a pyramid or a hip. We just use these shapes because it looks really cool. It also is outside of the park footprint. Technically, it is part of the footprint of the park, but it's it breaks up the monotony, breaks up the straight lines, and it actually is very functional. So this is going to be a larger piece right here. It's probably going to be about 3 to 4 feet tall, and I can envision riders riding up that, popping big ollies, and coming back down and riding back up, or vice versa, going the other direction. I'm going to change the camera view because I have, I think, about 5 or 6 different views. So here's a opposite version looking from north to south. And now you can kind of see a little bit more about how these sections are broken up. You've got that beginner kind of intermediate section up top. You've got that curb. This is just a curb. It's steel. And it's really, really fun. Yes.
Is that a slappy curb?
Yes, it is.
Councilman Bell and I, since we've attended,
Slappy curb.
have learned that term. We wanted to
Is
make
that the slappy? It definitely is. We have a slappy curb at my local park, designed and built by Spawn Ranch in Deerfield, Illinois. It's 16 feet long, and it is honestly, I'll drive 20 minutes, 2-3 times a week just to grind the little slappy curb. It's super fun, fun for all ages. You can slide it, grind it, pop over it, jump over it, whatever you'd like to do. This one's super long. I'm guessing this is probably about 50 feet. Well, it's probably about 30 feet from this ledge to that end. My pointer points when the picture is small. But But yeah, and you can kind of see how we added a little ledge to that. So that adds a different feature to this side. We call that a bank to ledge. And this is a really, really fun skatable feature where riders would come up at an angle, grind the ledge, come back off, or come up, maybe slide the ledge, come back off, pop it, maybe manual it. So there's a mani pad basically right there. You can really see that feature down here now, these two wedges. I think we've built this once before in a park in California, and we painted these as orange wedges, orange peels. It's actually in our brochure. So same principle, same idea. Everything that's skatable or grindable is going to be steel banded or steel edged, and that preserves the longevity of the park, obviously. I might have mentioned that slappy curve is steel. It's concrete filled steel, or steel filled with concrete. Same with this ledge up here too. Steel with concrete in it. A different angle of these bowls. All right, let's see if I got another picture. Oh, I didn't mention this little section up here. Again, you know, we often during the design process when we're, you know, placing pieces, we really like symmetry. We really like our parks to look pleasing architecturally, visually. We kind of took key off of this lobe up here and put a little one down here, but this actually is functional. It actually works as a warm-up section. And you can see one of the access paths here. This may be where the access path ends up, may not. But we envision riders coming into the park at this level, or this level, probably at this level. And you want to have a place to warm up. You want to have a place to do flat ground tricks, pop your ollies, get your legs underneath you before you start really going for it. So that's larger than it looks. It's probably about 20 by 10, and maybe less, maybe 8. But it's an area where you can kind of just stand around or practice your flat ground tricks. There's a different view of the volcano and the street section. Bumped bollard. We call these when the back side of those rails is raked back, it's called a raked rail. So again, that's designed to be ridden up sometimes, a more advanced trick, but a rider could ride up that and ride down it. Same thing with these ledges or hubbas here, with the hubba right there. All right. Also, we wanted to add an extension here. That helps you get from one end of the park to the other end of the park. So you can see that this is a little taller than this section. And of course, this is taller than this section. So it gives you ability to have varied speeds to get to your obstacles. Because that's kind of the name of the game here, is that yes, you can ride through the park effortlessly, continuously, nonstop. You're going to need to make sure that there aren't any other riders, because most of the times there's going to be 1 or 2 riders specifically working on something, maybe this ledge or something like that. And they're going to need a certain amount of speed. So now they have options on speed or run up to get to it. Another angle, this is looking, I say, east to west. And by the way, these sidewalks are placed in here for visual. They're not, they probably aren't in the exact location. And I'm not even sure that this north one is, I know that's not in the right spot. Is there anything else? I think that's all for these images. Gives you a kind of a cool view of the street course. Any other questions?
What's the square footage you're looking at here for the total project?
Sure. This, I believe, calculated just right around 12,000 square feet, which was our target.
Thank you. And is this still looking like it's in the budget range that we allocated originally?
Well, we're still working on that, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me. One of our processes, once we've designed this, is to send it back to our construction manager just to make sure our numbers are in line. And he had some comments about the price of concrete in Utah. So we might have to talk a little bit about maybe the color in the concrete. That adds a cost. Maybe kind of I don't know, playing around with creative ways to get that down a little bit. Who knows? But again, that's something that we want to discuss. Our goal is to get it to the target of the budget. So, yeah.
I'm really excited. I love the design. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? You know, it's not a public hearing, but I feel like if the council's willing, you know, we have a minute, and if you have questions that are pertinent to the design, if you want to come to the microphone. We only have about 5 minutes left in our meeting, so.
Okay. So this one is sweet. I just
Flip.
have.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, how are you, Adam? Loved your stories lately of all the parks you're going to. Sweet. My only concern with this one, I know it's the final, but if there's anything we can do, is my worry with the volcano in the center is that's a lot more opportunity for collision, because it isn't just a one-way feature. Like, people can be going here and then one person decides to turn and then they crash into each other. And that's especially trickier with younger riders who don't quite know all the skate park etiquette and stuff like that. And by putting a feature like that in the middle of all these lanes, it just seems like an opportunity for collisions to happen. Whereas earlier when we had an option 2, which was, I don't know if you guys saw some of the Instagram polls, but it was like hundreds of people voted for that over a few tens to the option 1. The other one, in option 2, had so many lanes where there was no chance for people to cross over with each other. And I don't know if that's something that's at all possible to look at, but that was my only concern with this design. Other than that, it looks pretty dang awesome. So, yeah.
Hey, Flip, let me ask you real quick. Because I do remember the volcano was something that really excited people. So maybe the placement of the volcano, I don't know that there's a better place for it. But what if the volcano was not a flat top? What if it was no coping and maybe more of a bump or a pump type of bump? Do you see that being? I'm just wondering your opinion. Would you see that as being a more safe option?
I do think it would be more safe, but I don't know that it's still as functional as having the lanes that were in the other option. But I think that might make it a little bit easier, because then you can't go straight over it, whereas most people who aren't advanced definitely can't go over it.
Cool, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Any other questions from the council? Well, this is exciting. We really appreciate your time and your walking us through this, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mayor, could I just ask one final question?
Yes.
Is one of the purposes of presenting this tonight is to get a feel from the council if you're comfortable with us moving forward with preparation of construction documents and getting this thing ready to go out to bid and to be built. It's the next logical step from this point.
Yes.
I would say yes, with the caveat that as our intended user group maybe has any, final suggestions to make sure it's functional and safe, that we do our best to work them into this design. But otherwise, things I've heard from the user groups seem to have mostly made it into the final.
And I would say yes, with some reasonable confidence of budget or some phasing.
For sure. Yep.
As far as it pertains to the budget, and we want to make these tweaks to make it user friendly, when is the hard? I mean, I don't want to approve it and then we aren't able to make any tweaks. So I just want to have a real. I want to to be able to set realistic expectations. So what does that timeline look like, or are we just delaying it, or what would be the best course of action, Adam, in your opinion, to accommodate any major changes? And I obviously have never built a skate park before, so I don't know what it means when we talk about moving the volcano. But I just want to make sure we're taking those into consideration, but we're realistic in what we can deliver and when.
Sure. Well, my next steps internally would be to, basically have like a meeting with our design team, our construction manager, talk about the budget, make sure that our numbers are in line, discuss potential revisions with Lloyd, and essentially prepare the final design with a cost estimate. And that can happen as early as, I want to be careful because our guy that does these nice renderings is actually out for another week. So I don't want to say next week, but soon, within the next 2 weeks, let's put it that way.
Will that still give us time for construction and bid, or will we be going into our moratorium, or where are we?
There's time to get to construction. Preparation of construction documents probably isn't going to take too long. I would guess a month-ish, give or take. It's probably a fair guess.
Yeah, that's about right. And also, during that process, I'm sure you're familiar with it, we share the documents back and forth. Ultimately, it's similar to a design process, but we will share like an 80%. They call it 90, pick up any comments, bring it to 100.
The good thing about building a skate park is you can do that even when the weather is not quite as good.
All I know is my kids are really excited about this. So thanks.
How's the rest of the park coming along as far as time frame goes?
Things are looking good. They're making good progress. Fields are pretty well graded. We got word about using seed, which we expect to go on the ground the first part of September. Starting to dig footings for the restroom. We're working on parking lots, pickleball. It's moving forward. It's good. They're anxious.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions about the skate park? Thank you so much. Excellent.
Thanks,
Okay.
Adam.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much, Adam.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we will close this meeting now and take a quick break before we start our regular city council meeting at 7 o'clock.